Think about this for a second. Have you ever actually stopped to consider the grand, sweeping scale of human existence? I mean, we've split the atom, we've built staggering empires, and we've literally mapped the stars. Yet, right beneath all of those massive technological triumphs, there is a profound biological tragedy playing out quietly inside almost every single one of us. So, in today's explainer, we are diving deep into a cinematic piece of writing called The Dragon's Call. It uses this brilliant mythical allegory to diagnose exactly what is going wrong inside our modern bodies and, far more importantly, how we can actually fix it. Okay, let's get right into it. The text introduces us to a truly fascinating narrator. Imagine an ancient, incredibly wise dragon named Zoran. Zoran is speaking from an altitude where time itself basically thins out. He's been observing humanity for 40,000 centuries. And from that sweeping vantage point, he hits the nail on the head regarding our core issue. He tells humanity, your nervous systems are running emergency code as their default operating system. Now, most of us, we just call that feeling normal life. But Zoran calls it out for what it is, a biological tragedy written in cortisol and confusion. We're all just walking around constantly primed for disaster that isn't actually happening. So let's look at part one, the internal tiger. To really understand this tragedy, the story introduces us to Fletcher Soul Traveler. He's a guy who reads way too much, sleeps way too little, and honestly, he's basically a stand-in for all of us trying to survive in the modern world. Fletcher goes to Zoran with this agonizing problem. He describes waking up at 3 a.m., his heart absolutely pounding out of his chest like he's actively being hunted. His breathing is shallow and panicked. But he looks around his dark room and absolutely nothing is chasing him. He asks Zoran, why does my body think a prehistoric saber-toothed tiger still exists? Why are all these alarm bells blaring when I'm perfectly safe in my bed? Zoran answers by pointing out a pretty devastating truth. The tiger does still exist. You see, we didn't escape the predator, we swallowed it. We traded the external threat of a wild animal hunting us in the jungle for an entirely internal threat. We literally moved the tiger inside. It's now a state of chronic sympathetic dominance that's just gnawing on us from within. Our whole modern civilization is essentially just a masquerade for chronic, low-grade, constant stress. All right, moving from myth to hard science. Part 2, Anatomy of an Emergency. The text defines this very modern condition as sympathetic dominance. This is a literal biological state where your nervous system is completely locked into running its emergency fight or flight code around the clock. Your biology fundamentally doesn't know the difference between a looming prehistoric predator and, say, a really stressful email from your boss. It triggers the exact same alarm. We are literally marinating our organs in the chemistry of an emergency while we're just sitting quietly at our desks. And when your amygdala fires off that alarm state, the physical cascade inside you is immediate. Your vagus nerve, which is supposed to be this grand flowing river of calm, shrinks down to a frightened little stream. Your heart rate variability completely collapses. Up in your brain, the prefrontal cortex, the logical reasoning part of you, basically goes offline. And chemically, you are flooded with a toxic wash of cortisol and adrenaline. Now contrast that with the integrated state of calm. In that state, vagal tone rises like a dawn. Heart coherence expands, the cortical regions of your brain literally thicken, and those inflammation-causing cytokines just drop away. Now, during that alarmed state, something else is happening up in the brain. The text introduces us to the default mode network. You can think of this as the neural committee of me, myself, and my story. Under stress, this network lights up like a Vegas casino. It chatters incessantly. It's that exhausting, anxious narrator constantly talking in your head that you probably mistake for your true self. And it is completely distracting you from the deeper, much calmer architecture of your actual consciousness. Which brings us to part 3, the universal booby trap. Desperate for any kind of solution, Fletcher actually went to extremes to break free from this sympathetic dominance. He immersed himself in total darkness for 11 days straight, just trying to quiet his mind. And finally, it worked. He achieved about 6 hours of pure silence, a state he beautifully describes as existence loving itself. No ego, no stress, just pure being. But almost instantly, he got so excited about his own success that his ego came rushing back in like a drunk uncle crashing a peaceful party. Zoran actually laughs at this. He congratulates Fletcher for discovering the universal booby trap of neural integration. It's a paradox. The moment your identity, that chattering default mode network we just talked about, tries to claim the experience of peace, the experience completely collapses. The hand that reaches out to grasp the peace is the very hand that dissolves it. You simply cannot achieve deep calm by aggressively striving for it with your ego. So, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that escaping this trap is a real biological process, not just some mystical idea. Modern scientists have measured exactly what the ancients intuited years ago. When we actually reboot our system, it is a measurable biological event. The default mode network goes quiet, while the cortical regions associated with attention physically thicken. Gamma waves in the brain light up like supernovas, vagal tone rises, and all those inflammatory markers like cytokines take a nosedive. This isn't magic. It's biology remembering its natural state of peace. Let's get into part 4, the evolutionary upgrade. Fletcher, pacing back and forth in this ancient cave, finally asks the exact question we are all thinking right about now. So what are you asking me to do, Zoran? What are you asking us to do? This is the turning point. It shifts our entire focus from merely diagnosing our massive chronic stress problem to revealing a heartfelt, ultimate biological solution. Zoran answers with a radical, heartfelt paradigm shift. He says we have to move entirely away from the old paradigm. The old way is all about optimizing the ego, trying to hack our stress or treating calmness as some sort of spiritual luxury, like a weekend retreat you have to earn. Instead, the new paradigm requires us to actively deconstruct those anxious identity loops. We must establish parasympathetic coherence, which is deep biological peace, not as a vacation, but as our everyday baseline. It is a profound, incredibly practical hardware upgrade. And honestly, the most empowering truth of this whole explainer is that you don't need to invent or buy anything new to do this. The next operating system, the one that runs on pure peace, clarity, and biological integration, is already installed in your hardware. Your body is quite literally built for this. You possess the biological machinery right now. As Zoran so perfectly puts it, you simply have to log in. And finally, part 5, the direct call. As the text nears its end, something incredible happens. Zoran turns his gaze outward, past Fletcher, past the ancient cave, and he looks directly at you. Yes, you, he says, the one whose pulse just changed. He actually notes that physical flutter you might be feeling right now behind your sternum. And he points out that this feeling, it is an anxiety. It is deep biological recognition. You are hearing the call. The harmonic older than fear is recognizing the truth of its own biology. The text leaves us with a brilliant scientific closing invitation. It's a way to begin shifting your awareness today, and it's elegantly simple. Step 1, just close your eyes for 3 minutes. Seriously, don't try to force a deep meditation, just sit and observe. Step 2, notice your nervous system actively telling the story. That's that chattering default mode network spinning up stress. And step 3, notice the part of your nervous system that is simply listening to the story. That quiet, steady observer underneath it all. Because by distinguishing the narrator from the observer, you slip right between the cracks of that emergency code. So I want to leave you with this to ponder. What would your life actually look like if calm wasn't a rare reward at the end of a brutal week, but your actual everyday biological baseline? Take a moment to think about that and just listen.